Welcome to Business Talk Sister Talk. I'm Becca, and today's episode is how to leverage nearshoring for your business. And with me today, I have Brian Sampson. Thank you so much for being with me.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is actually the second episode we have done together. The first one was what is offshoring and nearshoring, so you should definitely check that out as well, just to get you a little bit orientated into what we're going to be talking about today. So the first question I have for you is tell me about like how people get into doing nearshoring. What are the things that you recommend they think about?
Yeah, so there's definitely a possibility for a DIY component because there's labor platforms that exist, and we touched on this in the last show. Fiverr, Upwork, all the stuff is available. Global talent is there. Now, what you might not know is that Upwork changed their business model a few years ago. So they used to do what happens often in staffing is the company kind of pays all the fees. But they flipped it a few years ago. So it's inverted, and now the candidates pay a lot of the fees. So
Hmm.
really good talent doesn't love Upwork anymore.
Mm.
Um, but a lot of people kind of use it to get started, to get access to opportunities, kind of build their resume a little bit. But there is a level of like kind of graduating off of Upwork, graduating off of Fiverr. So that's where we tend to play. We're using a lot of local job boards, local searches, because we're Latin America focused. Our recruiters are south of the border. They're bilingual, so they're able to have conversations in Spanish, but also, vet people's English and really make sure that they're gonna hit all the check boxes, culture fit, just like anything else. So my advice is don't be afraid to DIY, but recognize that as soon as you've kind of gotten your learnings, you might be ready to graduate. And it's not super easy to recruit talent when you're not a trusted entity in Latin America. I think that's really important.
Hmm.
Um, this is a region, and granted, there's quite a few countries on this continent, but this is a region that has had a lot of volatility, and I want to get into why that's good and why that's bad.
Okay.
So they've had a lot of volatility in, you probably have seen the news and you hear about cartels, in Mexico and bread lines and worthless currency in Venezuela and, dictators and all sorts of crazy stuff, that happens. And that uh, that's where like an agency can kind of navigate the stuff. They know how to reach the talent. They know how to work with the currency. They know how to work with compliance and employment of record and entities and taxes um, and really just connect with the right talent and phrase the opportunity in a way that they appreciate. But because we're a trusted entity, I've got 10 years in the region. I've been an expat myself. So we have this instant credibility with
Hmm.
the labor market down there. But if you're brand new, people are kind of worried like,
Mm-hmm.
is this new company from the US, are they going to pay me? Am
Mm.
I going to get kind of screwed over? Because there's this inherent lack of trust for institutions and like unknowns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but let me tell you, Becca, why the volatility is a fantastic thing for us as consumers of talent. So we often kind of hold people to blame, even though it's not their fault. So, we hear about the headlines again, in Venezuela, Mexico, wherever, and just kind of assume like, that country's toxic or poison, so the labor must be too.
Hmm.
But it's really just like a small percentage of leaders that are to blame, right? But the population is like living under this, and they didn't choose where they were born.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you live under volatility, high inflation, unpredictability, labor strikes, queues, whatever, you become pretty adaptable, pretty flexible,
Pretty scrappy. Yeah.
scrappy,
Yeah.
pretty calm under chaos,
Mm-hmm.
uh, pretty creative, really good at critical thinking, finding workarounds, problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell me, an entrepreneur, a hiring manager, does anybody not want those attributes with people that they hire? So this is inherent, this is like just par for the course for talent in Latin America because they've had to deal with all this stuff, growing up throughout their whole lives. Where for us in the States, it depends who you talk to and what's happened in the media that day, but our volatility isn't what it is in Latin America. So, the year where we had like 8% inflation, we were all freaked out. But, some of these countries have like 60% inflation every month. It's crazy. And restaurant menu items are written in chalk because, they're changing so often, they can't have printed prices. But again,
Mm-hmm.
don't blame them for that. Appreciate all the skills and attributes that they have acquired because that's a normal part of their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that's interesting. Like, I was just talking, my mom actually grew up in Brazil, and one of her friends just sent her a a post about like I think there's a tariff coming on medication to Brazil, and her friend
Yeah.
was like, "Look at what your country is doing to us." And my mom is like, "Okay, I can't do anything about that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry." Like, and I think it's the same thing though, like vice versa with what you're talking about. Like these people can't control what their country is doing, but like
That's right.
they're scrappy and they're figuring it out. And with the use of technology, now they have access to be outside of their local economy to be able to be more stable than their nation is.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about like the average price point of hiring a person to do different skills and what are the kind of jobs that would be best to consider?
Yeah, so I would highly advise anything that's like um, internally strategic, or like if you're a software development company, maybe your first two engineers or your co-founders, I would probably have them in the States. But everything beyond that is like staff augmentation, individual contributors, junior to senior level, perfect. Digital marketers, UI UX developers, DevOps, software developers, operations, call center, customer service, BPO. This is like right in the sweet spot. There's such great talent. And then there's also this kind of leadership level where, in a personal experience, I'm in Hawaii and the time zone is pretty bad when I'm working with the East
Mm-hmm.
Coast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I used to, you know, have to get up really early just in case like an issue happened, 9 a.m. on
Mm-hmm.
the East Coast. But then, I started to hire these really great leaders and managers in places like Argentina and Mexico. And it blew my mind because they would then be the face to the client. And as I wake up in the morning, I see like, uh-oh, something happened at a client, right? Like, agency owners, we all we all deal with this. But instead of me having to deal with that, my manager or leader or client-facing person not only, understood the issue, but I can see this email thread of them solving it, in real time. So I'm just kind of reading it like a newspaper story by the time I wake up, like problem, issue, solution, implementation, over. So now I sleep easy, and I wake up like at a normal time. All
Mm-hmm.
because, you've got that leadership level there too.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally like that's such a nice problem like to have.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So tell me about that price point aspect. What would you expect
Mm.
someone to
Oh,
be
yeah, absolutely.
considering?
So typically if you're looking at just the labor prices, so I'm not adding anything related to, using an agency or getting hardware, into the country or anything like that. Just the price points, just the raw
Hmm.
price points. So for call center customer service, Central America is a great place. It's marginally more expensive than, say, the Philippines. So you're looking at maybe like $8 to $12 an hour, for people like that.
Hmm.
Software developers, there's more of a monthly price, and that's usually, say $2,000 to $3,000 a month for QA, and then it just incrementally goes up. 4,000 to 6,000 is kind of the sweet spot for, most software development roles. But there are places, you mentioned Brazil. There's this tech hub there called Florianopolis, which has been a feeder for some really complicated roles that are servicing Silicon Valley companies, like AI engineers, data engineers. They're making six-figure salaries, in Latin America, but there's still an arbitrage element. They might make $140,000 a year, which sounds crazy for somebody in Brazil, but you're paying 400K, for somebody at that same level in San Francisco or New York. So
Hmm.
the arbitrage is, this like kind of long continuum. You can still pay big salaries, but it's still an arbitrage, based on what you might pay locally.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So when you pick like an agency or an individual to work with, like what would you recommend questions that should be asked?
Yeah, I think this is actually a pretty easy answer. Don't change for if you were to hire them, let's say you're in Minnesota and you were to hire somebody in Minnesota, take them through the exact same paces. Maybe there's a case study or role-related test or behavioral questions that you do. Keep it consistent, do the exact same thing, and make the talent kind of work with your structure. And I think you'll do fine.
So then the next question I have, because I think this is the part where people get really nervous. What are the reporting and tab tax implications of nearshoring?
Yeah. So I've got really good news for your listeners. 5, 6 years ago, this was kind of like a chaotic
Wild
question
West.
and
Yeah.
stressful,
Hmm.
Wild West. Like, what
Hmm.
do I do? Am I breaking the law? Um, there are so many companies now that have existed in this middle space. The most common and popular deal, DEEL, Rippling is there, Multiplier, Oyster, Pioneer, Wise. They all have some element of international payments and employment of record. You can hire people as employees, you can hire them as contractors. It's all done for you. That's why they exist, and it takes all the stress out of your hands.
Okay. So then when you say were to do your tax reporting, you just have like say invoices from those different companies or whatever, and you just say, well, this is my cost of what I have paid.
Yeah, so in the case of like working with Plug, my company,
Hmm.
our US entity would invoice the customer's US entity.
Okay.
So they would have like none of the back office, like I'm my guys in Mexico, what do I do?
Hmm.
Have to do a thing. It's totally on the agency. And then you're just working with that vendor, their US entity and your US entity.
Yeah. Okay. And then my last question around this, because I think that this is where I also get concerned or like have to do a lot of checks on my own, but like how does security work with giving access to someone in a different country to your stuff?
Yeah, this is why I like Latin America. There's a lot of legal precedents, IP protection that is basically mirroring the US. Now, you still want to have the same stuff you'd have if you had, you were in California, you had a team in Dallas. There are tools like Jump Cloud, that allows you to do remote shutdowns, remote protection, um, kind of like that PC anywhere world, where you can log in, disable stuff. You've got, they're, open source code and GitHub repositories, all that stuff, creates safety, but it's the same thing that any mature company would have
Hmm.
if your people are remote. So follow those same protocols. Latin America has positioned itself to export white collar services to the US. And they know that to do that, their court system has to reflect that, and they've done so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being with me today to talk about these things. I really enjoyed like all of this. How can people find you?
Thank you. Thanks, Becca. Plug Technologies, plugg.tech. And if you go to that website, you can reach me and have access to all of our resources and content, country guides, blogs, case studies, podcast episodes, all sorts of great stuff.
Yeah. And for the gawk portion of this episode, I would love for you to tell me about your first visit to Latin America after you convinced your wife this was a good plan.
Yeah, oh my gosh. So this is a solo trip that I took before I brought her.
Okay.
So this is
Probably
20,
smart.
yeah, so this is 2012. And 2015 is when we, her and I moved. But 2012, took a solo trip. I had some free time, and my very first stop was Buenos Aires. But I was flying from San Francisco, and it's hard to know this, but I'm 6'3". I'm pretty tall. Airplanes are really rough for me. So I can't sleep no matter how I twist and turn. So I usually just, stream movies all day. So I ended up like sleeping at the Lima airport, on a layover, and I've been up for like 36 hours straight. So I'm not the sharpest I've ever been. So I land in the airport, which is the big international airport in Buenos Aires is Ezeiza. It's about 2 hours outside the city. And I want to be like a local, cool, hostile backpacker guy, So I took the local bus, which was like $1, instead of an expensive taxi or anything. And it dropped me off about 2 miles from my hostel. It's probably 9 a.m., on like a Tuesday morning.
Okay.
And I'm walking through like a business district. It's not super crowded yet.
Mm-hmm.
And this I say kid, but he was probably like 18, 19 years old. I've got like a big kind of backpack, and then I've got a laptop bag. So these two bags.
Mm-hmm.
And this kid, comes up to me and he's like, the birds, the birds. And he keeps pointing to my shirt. And I want to be cool, I want to be like a friendly American, not, some jerk tourist. So I engage, and I'm like, oh yeah, birds. Like, sure, he's probably just trying to point, like, show me interesting birds. But then he starts like wiping my shirt, the back of my shirt. And he's like, oh, birds. And I realize he's trying to say like a bird pooped on my shirt. So he's, vigorously trying to clean, and then he's like cleaning the back of my jeans, and I see this like white gunk all over it. And I'm not thinking very straight. He convinces me to put both of my bags, against the wall. It's like a bank or something, outside. And then he spins me around as he's pointing up to the birds. And I'm like he's aggressively trying to wipe off the stuff. And I'm so thankful, like, wow, what a kind person. You're cleaning the bird poop off me. Um, and then he spins me back around. He starts sprinting away. And I see that my laptop bag is not there.
Oh
Like, oh,
no.
oh no, like I've been scammed. So I start, yelling like "mi bolsa," which is my bag, "mi bolsa," and uh, my heart is kind of like it's like all adrenaline, from like being super tired to like, okay, like I'm awake, this is all adrenaline. And I start yelling. A good Samaritan chases this guy down, gets my laptop bag, and brings it right back to me. And, I'm made whole again. And I'm kind of walking back down the street, and all the passerbyers are like, cuidado, be careful. Like,
They're like, dude, what are you doing? Watch out.
yeah. So, my
Yeah.
receptors were kind of high, the rest of the trip. I was like ready for anything, on guard. But believe it or not, the 9 times, the probably year plus I've spent in that country, never had anything close to that happen again.
That's like one of those things I feel like growing up, a lot of my friends would be like, oi, 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 like laughing at you afterwards, like, can't believe you fell for
I
that.
know, I know. Yep,
Yeah.
yep. The bird poop scam. Yeah, be careful if you ever visit there.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that story. That was such an interesting first experience for sure. Well, and if you've enjoyed this episode, you should give it a review on wherever you're listening, and I will see you next time.